There is a place whispered about in every conversation on lost knowledge, a place once said to house the entire world's wisdom, holding scrolls from the East and the West, texts from Africa to the Greek empires and everything in between, the Library of Alexandria. But one question continues to haunt historians, scholars, and truth seekers around the world. How could something so grand, so ahead of its time, simply vanish? Let us peel back the myths and reveal what really happened to the greatest library in human history. The truth is not as simple as a single fire, nor is it locked in conspiracy. It is layered, chaotic, and deeply human. The birth of a dream. Founded in the early 3rd century BCE, Ptolemy Isoter, one of Alexander the Great's generals, the Library of Alexandria was not just a collection of scrolls. It was the heartbeat of a vision. The Ptolemaic dynasty wanted to create not just a military empire, but an empire of knowledge. Ptolemy Tessery expanded the project and turned the library into a monumental part of the Moseon, an institute that brought together poets, scientists, philosophers, mathematicians, and scribes. It was here that Euclid wrote his legendary work on geometry. Here, where early concepts of astronomy and medicine were refined. The library is believed to have held anywhere from 200,000 to 700,000 scrolls at its height. But more than the number of documents, it was the diversity and rarity of the material that mattered. It held texts from Assyria, Persia, India, Greece, Egypt, and even Buddhist manuscripts from far regions of Asia. This was not just a library. It was an information superpower, but it is also where the danger began. Knowledge is power and threat. When a single place becomes the epicenter of global knowledge, it gains not only importance, but also enemies. Think of it like this: when power is concentrated, those who wish to control it either align themselves with it or plot to dismantle it. The scholars of the Library of Alexandria worked without national boundaries. The library aggressively collected knowledge. Ships that docked in Alexandria were often searched, and any scrolls found were taken, copied, and the originals kept while the copies were returned. That practice made enemies. Some even say the library was so important to the Ptolemies that they sent emissaries across the world to purchase or seize scrolls. But what happens when you hoard global knowledge? You become both a cultural jewel and a political target. The first blow, Julius Caesar and the flames. Most people blame Julius Caesar for the destruction of the library, and there is some truth to that, but not the whole truth. In 48 BCE, Caesar was embroiled in a civil war in Egypt, supporting Cleopatra against her brother Ptolemy's III. During the siege of Alexandria, Caesar ordered his ships to be set on fire to prevent them from being captured. The fire spread across the harbor and into parts of the city. According to Plutarch and other ancient historians, this fire may have destroyed the storage facility where scrolls were kept. Possibly a satellite part of the library located near the port. Was the main library hit? That is debated, but the damage was real and thousands of scrolls were likely lost. Yet the library did not vanish in this moment. It endured, scarred but alive. The Christian shift and a new threat centuries passed. The Roman Empire eventually transitioned into a Christian empire, and with this ideological transformation came new waves of censorship, fear, and destruction. By the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, Christianity became the dominant power in Alexandria. Pagan temples were closed, and with them, many educational institutions that were considered part of the older pagan traditions. The Library of Alexandria, while weakened, may still have existed in part or in spirit, possibly in the form of a smaller annex at the Serapeum. Then came one of the most infamous events in ancient history. In 391 CE, Theophilus, the Archbishop of Alexandria, ordered the destruction of the Serapeum, a grand temple complex that likely housed part of the surviving collection. This order was carried out with brutal force, encouraged by the Roman Emperor Theodosius I, who declared paganism illegal. It was not just a temple that burned, it was a mind, a memory, Gone were priceless scrolls, ancient maps, early medical records, and unknown treatises on science and philosophy. It was not an accident. It was a purge, Hypatia, and the tragedy of intellect. Just when it seemed the fire was dying, another flicker of resistance appeared. A woman named Hypatia, a mathematician, philosopher, and one of the last great minds connected to the Alexandrian tradition. Hypatia taught Neoplatonism and mathematics in Alexandria, openly challenging the rising tide of religious extremism. In 415 CE, she was targeted by a Christian mob, dragged from her chariot, and brutally murdered in the streets. Her death symbolized the final nail in the coffin for the intellectual culture that had once defined Alexandria. The dream of the library, the spirit of free thought, died with her. What about the Muslims? A myth debunked. Many falsely claim that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed under Muslim rule after the Arab conquest of Egypt in the 7th century CE. The story says that Caliph Omar ordered the burning of the remaining scrolls, stating, "If the books are in agreement with the Quran, we have no need of them, and if they oppose the Quran, destroy them." But this story appears over 500 years after the supposed event and is considered by most serious historians to be a fabrication. By the time the Arabs arrived in Alexandria in 6042 CE, there likely was no grand library left to burn. What was destroyed happened long before their time, because it fits a dramatic narrative. But the real damage had already been done by the Romans, Christians, and centuries of decline. It was not one fire, it was 1,000 cuts. So here is the uncomfortable truth. The Library of Alexandria was not destroyed in a single act. There was no single villain, no climactic explosion of flame that erased everything in a night. It was destroyed slowly, through war, political fear, ideological cleansing, and plain human carelessness. It was attacked by accident and by design. It was crushed under the boots of generals, erased by emperors who feared independent minds, and trampled by mobs who were taught that questioning the world was a sin, and perhaps worst of all, it was forgotten by those who should have protected it. What did we lose? We may never fully grasp the magnitude of the loss. We know that early works on medicine, including surgeries and anesthesia, were likely housed in the library. Ancient astronomy texts, global maps that predate our known versions, and works on mathematics and physics that could have accelerated human progress by centuries, gone. It is also believed the library may have preserved Buddhist, Persian, and Indian manuscripts that we now only know through fragments. Think of the languages, the myths, the cures, and the philosophies that disappeared with those scrolls. Some say even lost plays of Sophocles and Euripides, unknown works of Aristotle, and early accounts of African civilizations were buried in that sea of scrolls. Imagine if humanity had retained that head start. We might have reached the moon 1,000 years earlier, cured diseases we still struggle with, understood the Earth and its climate long before crisis. But here is the twist. While the physical library was destroyed, its idea did not die. The very notion that knowledge must be protected, shared, and pursued, no matter the risk, survived. That idea lives on in every modern library, university, and archive. Today we digitize, we decentralize. We know that information must never again be allowed to concentrate so heavily that it can be lost to fire, faith, or fear. Alexandria is a warning, but also a mission. It is a call to protect what we know, to preserve what we discover, and to question what we are told. So the next time you open a book, read a study, or browse an online archive, remember that somewhere in the ashes of ancient Egypt, a scroll once held the same information, written by a hand that believed their ideas would survive forever. They were wrong, but we do not have to be. If this story moved you, share it, because history forgotten is history repeated. And somewhere, buried beneath the waves of time, the Library of Alexandria still waits, not to be rebuilt, but to be remembered.